Hello and welcome to Unit A000. Again, this is the second talk for that unit, and it's a unit about nothing. So, with an open university talk with nothing planned. And so I did kind of plan one thing, which is that I would take books from my shelf behind me and read a sentence at random from them. So it's a kind of I Ching structure, or it's a kind of a German book, that's good. Zwischen Null und Unendlich by Karl Krollo, between zero and infinity. So, and it's a book of poetry, and I'm going to read a verse of poetry. Ich warte auf meine Stunde. I'm waiting for my hour. Ich suche. I'm searching. Ich finde. I'm finding. Ich spreche. I'm speaking. That seems very suitably Buddhistic, almost. Ich bin mit der Zeit im Bunde und ihrem Vergehen ihre Schwäche. I am with time in Bunde, in its frame. Frame is frame? I'm not sure. Und ihrem Vergehen. Yeah, this is where my German begins to slip up, and so I'm going to pick another book at random, possibly in a foreign language. I picked Bright Day by JB Priestley, which is interesting because I've read at least half of this. I was reading this a month or so ago. I'm going to open it at random. That's the bloke. Didn't think you'd have known him. Dry, dullish chap. Met him here, I suppose, eh? I have met him here, I replied, rather carefully. But as a matter of fact, I knew him and his wife years and years ago, before the 1914 war, up in Bruddesford. So this is the narrator, who's a Hollywood film scriptwriter who's gone to a little seaside town to complete a script he's working on, and he meets some people he remembers from his very early teens, or his mid to late teens actually, in this city called Bruddesford, which is actually Huddersfield, a disguised version of Huddersfield, where JB Priestley himself was brought up. So it's quite an autobiographical novel, and I've compared this to D.H. Lawrence with Feet of Clay. D.H. Lawrence kind of crossed with Harold Wilson, because there is quite a lot of the Labour Party politician, of the old Labour, post-war Labour, about J.B. Priestley, and indeed he did meet, and know very well those politicians like Harold Wilson. He always had his pipe. He was a kind of ugly man, so he's describing courting some of the girls in a family he's obsessed with in Huddersfield, Bruddesford. It smells very good, this book. It is a bright day. I'm waiting for the weather to improve, because we're promised here in Osaka 16 degrees on Friday, which it's actually been very cold, and it's been very noticeable because the cold comes into the house here. I don't heat my house in any way. Don't have any heating except for my little projector, which heats up the room very slightly with the bulb of the projector. But I just put on these warmer clothes, padded clothes, when it gets cold. But I'm very much looking forward to spring, to be able to get out. I probably will do far fewer of these Open University broadcasts in spring, because I'll be out on my bike, just enjoying the spirit of the place. Perhaps I can take the camera with me and do some sort of voiceover stuff again. Okay, I'm not looking. This is Arthur Schnitzler, Jugend in Wien, autobiography. It's Schnitzler's autobiography of his youth in Vienna. So quite similar to the Priestley we just looked at. I have dipped into this, actually. I found some of it quite interesting, especially the question of how Jewishness was dealt with in Vienna around about the late 19th century, turn of the century, when Schnitzler was a Jew. Kunst, here we're beginning in the middle of a sentence, actually. An einem jener geselligen Abende im Haus des blinden alten Doktors muss es wohl natürlich nur in Worten und Blicken noch lebhafter und ausgelassener Herzgängen sein als sonst. And I'm a jener geselligen Abend. In another something evening in the house of the blind old doctors, we had to, naturally, in words and in gestures or in glimpses. We had to ausgelassener hergegangen sein als sonst. I don't know, my German is not up to that. But it's something they had to do in the old doctor's house of the blind. Perhaps he's describing workarounds for the Gelegenheit. Yeah, that one is going to have to remain a little bit mysterious. I'm slightly trying to avoid German ones because they're tricky. Not impossible though. Diderot, Philosophe series. This is the great encyclopédiste and Enlightenment philosopher Diderot, who also wrote a fantastic pornographic novel called Les Bijoux Indiscrets, which bijou is a French slang term for vagina. So les bijoux indiscrets are indiscreet vaginas, talking vaginas, vaginas which tell of their experiences with men, with penises. So in a sense, he invented the vagina monologues in the 18th century in France. So extraits, these are extracts from Diderot. The first extrait here. This is a play. Mademoiselle de l'Espinasse says, "Fort bien, docteur. Jolly good, doctor. It seems to me already that I see behind the car of our duchesses 5 or 6 big insolent goat feet, and this makes me rejoice. Chèvre pied, goat's feet, insolent goat's feet. Gosh, I don't know what the context of that is, but it's from a play, a dialogue actually. The philosopher and the marshal, the interviewer of a philosopher avec the marshal of Asterix, as a place unknown. Elle était à sa toilette, on m'approchait au fauteuil. She was doing herself up in the boudoir. They brought me an armchair. They led me to an armchair. I sat down and we chatted on certain subjects of which I proposed, which surprised and edified her, because she was of the opinion that he who denied the very holy Trinity is a man of sack and of cord, who would finish by being hanged. So this is an atheist talking to a believer, who's also an aristocrat, I think. So very much the stuff of the 18th century, which is the rational assault on religion, which we're still fighting in various contexts today, whether it's the case of respect for all religions, no hate speech, blah, 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 versus, this idea of alternative truths or fake news, or is it okay just to believe whatever the hell you want? Okay, next book is another German one. Rudolf Köster, a book about Joseph Roth, who's a writer. And there's a beautiful old card inside with the author list of the publisher, Colloquium Verlag Berlin. Fantastic. I just read this list of the authors they had in this publisher. Saul Bellow, Thomas Bernhardt, Hermann Broch, Paul Celan, Alfred Doblin, Federico Garcia Lorca, Paul Hindemith, Max Horkheimer. Fantastic. Arno Schmidt I love. Max Weber I love. Virginia Woolf. Fantastic. So the thing I'm going to read in 1930 from the Munich publisher, Verlag Knorr and Hirth, came forth a collection of his newspaper columns in book form. It was called Panopticon, Gestalten und Kulissen. Kulissen, I don't know, it might be corridors. Gestalten. Panopticum with a K is great. That's the all-seeing turret of a prison or something. which is round, usually rounded, and you can see everything from it. That's the kind of thing I would use for a Momus album title. Look out for my next album, Panopticon. That would be quite a political album. Of course, the main thing you think of if you're sort of academically inclined is Michel Foucault's Discipline and Punish, which talks a lot, has a whole chapter at least about the panopticon. The omni-surveillance device, which of course was pathetically inadequate back in those days, but now is, thanks to things including the handheld devices we carry with us everywhere, the computers we're always interfacing with, now that is the panopticon. It is everything we do being under the scrutiny potentially of intelligence services, even private companies these days. I'm going to accidentally on purpose choose one of my own books, oh my god, Un-America, and see what I choose at random from this. But I'm no fan of slasher movies, it says. Ooh, I guarantee that, had my eyes not been full of young blood, I would have made every effort to avoid major arteries. I was as shocked as everyone else when I saw those corpses, so young, so beautiful in their own way, their expressions surprisingly tranquil, their complexions pallid and waxy, as if a skilled undertaker had already been at work, strewn across the ice like mangled umbrellas or crashed flamingos. My first thought was, oh my god, Killer Mike strikes again. See, I wrote this book, but I have no idea what that is about, who is saying that, what's the context of that. I write these things and I totally forget that I've written them. It's about, it's chapter 18, Poseidon has made way for the snows of Gamelion, the glaucous larkspur, dichotomous and leafy, is nowhere to be seen. Zeus inhabits Amphitryon's body to seduce a man's wife. I've been sent home. It's something about Killer Mike. The house, oh yes, the narrator's house was built by a notorious serial killer in 1974 called Mike Chicago, who constructed it with his bare hands, turned the basement into a cold store in which you could hang the corpses of his victims like coats in a closet. So there is already some interesting little zingy correspondence between this book and the Diderot, which talked about someone, an atheist, being a piece of rope and sack who could be hanged. Got a lot of hanging going on in these books. Let's see what comes up next. Oh, it's another Immanuel Kant, the critique of reason, critique of judgment. Critique of judgment. Kritik der Urteilskraft in the Reclam edition. Here we go. Let's try. Alles wechselnden Freispiel, all exchanging free spirits of der Empfindungen, of discovery, die keine Absicht zum Grunde haben, which don't have any roots on the ground, vergnügt, weil es das Gefühl der Gesundheit befördert. While they're full of health, they flourish. Wir mögen nun in der bloody hell. Not even going to try with that. Too much German. But I just love the editions, that's why I buy these things. And they're 50 cents, you know. I always go in there with two thoughts, the Old Lady Bookshop, where I buy these books. I go in with one thought being less than the price of a cup of coffee, I can have 2 or 3 really good books, and that's very compelling. But also I go in there thinking, I haven't updated my Apple electronic equipment. I haven't bought a new laptop in years now, and even just replacing the broken power cord on my main laptop would cost $100, and I'm not going to do that. I'll just bind it up with tape, and it kind of half works. So I've got a lot of equipment that only half works just now, but I always think to myself, sure, I could spend $100 on a bloody cable, give that money to the richest company in the world, who's not actually innovating, not making any exciting new gear. They're making expensive new gear, but not exciting new gear at the moment. So instead of giving that money to them, I could spend it on books. Oh, this is a book which a friend gave me, Mackerel and Cremola by Ian Stephen. Actually, it was given to me by Alec Finley. But Ian Stephen, someone I went to university with, and check out, the link is under this, my interview with Ian a couple of years ago when he published the book of Death and Fish. Or is it Fish and Death? I always get it mixed up. Pick at random. Should have been a perfect summer, but I was missing Angusina's peppery lips. I still had the taste of them. It was her voice as well. Not giggling, bantering. There was a way to get out to her territory. We could take a borrowed tent to the fishing, but not to a dance. Kenny and me assembled the gear. This was the original bent nails job. The tent was light enough because there was no fly sheet, but the 6-inch nail pegs added up to a few pounds. The cooking stove wasn't so bad, but the gas cylinder had to be carried on a stick between us. That already catches Ian's tone, and also Ian's kind of concerns. Ian, when I first met him, he was a very spiritual guy, sort of hippie-ish, a Baha'i and a poet, who had, in my mind anyway, he lived in a lighthouse in Stornoway, came from the Outer Hebrides, and he'd been a heavy drinker in his teens and then had sort of stopped drinking and turned to religion instead, something like that. But he was obviously a very promising writer even then, and but he's also quite an outdoorsy kind of guy. He's not physically powerful, but he's very nimble, and he does a lot of sailing. So when I came to Stornoway to interview him, to meet with him again after 25 years, I got in a boat with him, and he was very bossy. He was actually going to get married the very next week or 2 weeks' time, and he was going to sail down to Wales to get married in a sailing boat. And so he's very outdoorsy, actiony, which reminds me a little bit of the book I was reading last night, which is Saint-Exupéry, and it's called Sun, Sea and Stars, and it's adventures of an aeropostale airman, a pilot. And there's a funny mixture of kind of a high philosophical tone about spirituality and about man and nature, and especially comradeship. This is his big theme, Saint-Exupéry, is friendship. The friendship which is brought on by danger, when danger is collectively faced by a group of men. Very much men, it's not a world of women at all. And Ian Stephen reminds me a little bit of that. There's this idea of the world of men and of comradeship and of honour, the honour of working men who encounter danger, who are pioneers. Next, and possibly the last one, because I might be running out of time, but okay, Lord Weary's Castle in the Mills of the Catanars by Robert Lowell. Robert Lowell was a big influence on me in my early 20s. For some reason, I saw a documentary about him, I think, possibly an Open University program, and really got hooked on his tone, his weary, slightly aristocratic Bostonian tone of depression, a slight element of sexual perversity because he was a bit of a voyeur. He used to go up and watch for love cars. He would what we now call dogging. Robert Lowell did it, and he was actually institutionalized a few times for a combination of depression and this kind of sexual shenanigans he got up to. So the poem I open at random at is The Ghost after Sextus Propertius. Propertius, also a very sexy poet, Latin Silver Age poet, 2,000 years ago. A ghost is someone. Death has left a hole for the lead-coloured soul to beat the fire. Cynthia leaves her dirty pyre. Propertius was always writing about Cynthia. And actually, Serge Gainsbourg's last album is also influenced by Sextus Propertius. It's kind of sounds like just a record of stuff about really bad rap imitations and technology and sex, sort of baby sex on the CD of Chuck Berry Chuck, this kind of doggerel. But actually, it is modelled on the Silver Age poets and especially Propertius. So he has a female character who recurs in that album called is it Marianne? I forget, Marie-Lou something. Not Marie-Lou. But anyway, it's based on Cynthia of Propertius. Cynthia leaves her dirty pyre and seems to coil herself and roll under my canopy, love's stale and public playground, where I lie and fill the rundown empire of my bed. Love's stale and public playground, where I lie and fill the rundown empire of my bed. One thing I've found with my Hearspool series is that slowing things down is tremendously important. You can read things at a certain speed, the speed of comprehension. The speed of manoeuvre, that's an interesting term from aeronautics. Actually, pilots, if they encounter severe turbulence, switch down, they slow down to the speed of manoeuvre, the speed at which they can both maintain air stability, but also have the chance to manoeuvre if things get worse or they need to make a change in course. But yeah, if you put a lot of silence around phrases, they really gain in ambiguity, strangely enough. There's almost a sense of you giving people the space to actually say, hey, wait a minute, does this really mean what it says? Or is that all that's going to come? There's going to be nothing to follow. Usually, you see, when we're listening slightly passively. It's a bit like watching a film with a constant flow of images, that each new image kind of crushes the last or recontextualizes the last. And so because that happens, because we're waiting for that to happen and expecting that to happen, we actually provisionally suspend our judgment and our critical faculties from the image we just saw last, because we know it's going to be modified by whatever comes next. But if you don't allow people to do that, don't make the supervening event crush the previous event, you actually force the previous event to stand on its own feet, as it were, and to mean something on its own, which it probably wasn't designed to do. I mean, I use phrases out of context, and they are phrases to be designed to be in a bigger context and kind of continuously semanticized, if you like, by what comes after. But if you take them out, they take on this heroic stature. They become object-like, landscape-like, thing-like, and that's actually sculptural in a way. You can have a sculpture of sound. I don't like to clutter my pieces with too much explanation of where they come from or what the meaning of the places they originally appeared in was. So it's a way to make language into a sculptural material. And if I read this poem much slower, a ghost is someone, it actually becomes much richer, not just the sounds of the words. It's like when you lay out a glossy magazine, you put a lot of white space around something. It's Ma, the spirit of Ma, the aesthetics of space and of silence. It really dignifies the thing which you put in that space, but also gives it this kind of almost too much significance, almost a paranoid significance, like a ghost. A ghost is someone. Is it someone we know? Your mind crowds with questions. Anyway, that was just a little bit of Robert Lowell, and I've probably spoken long enough, I think. All that remains is for me to wish you a good day.
Open University.